And ladies and gentlemen, it is Thursday night. We're live again. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here for you for another fun week. I'm Dixie Dave, my co-host Crusher Crossen. We're ready to have some fun with you tonight.
Yep, it's great to be live again. You know, it's really a lot of fun coming on every week. Well, we've been doing it every week. We usually go every other week, but man, this since the first of the year, I think we've only missed 1 week, Dave.
One, maybe 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's been fun going live, and last week's show was fun. We had Carmine Sabia join us. What a great interview! Here's a guy that was a promoter in the business back in the day and never knew a thing about what we did, right? And
Exactly.
it was just great to have him come in and see the footage for the first time and get his reaction to all of it. It was a really fun show.
And this week, provided he shows up, we have another interesting guest.
Yep, Brian Zane, and he's just we're just waiting for him to connect in, and once he does, we'll bring him in. I haven't heard from Brian. Brian, if he wasn't going to make it, he usually he would let me know, and I'm pretty confident we're still going to have him coming in here. So we're just going to have to wait for him to connect in. But that's fine. There's still a little bit of housekeeping I wanted to get out of the way before we get started with Brian. Um, I want to remind everybody, of course, that
Starting in 2 weeks and one day.
is it 2 weeks? I think it's a week.
Well, yeah. In
And
two
of course,
weeks,
we're talking about our NWF Hall of Fame
yeah.
2024 40th anniversary edition. Dave, it's I use the word this. I use the word Hall of Fame real loosely with us. I don't think of us famous like a Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan type situation.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
and in fact, I don't really like the word fame. I would rather call it the Hall of Recognition, but VFWs have Hall of Fames, softball leagues. It's okay to have a Hall of Fame in your organization. I'm fine with that, and we're just recognizing those who really stood out on our show, basically, right? It's
Yep.
just kind of what it is, and it's kind of a neat thing. And we're giving away a lot of stuff here, Dave, for this Hall of Fame. If you take part of this and vote, we're
Chance of
giving
winning
away.
t-shirts,
Oh yeah,
books, DVDs, championship wrestling belts.
and I can't go on without showing this thing, but I'm gonna miss this one. But this '87 Andre WWF World Title, what a nice looking belt, huh?
Exactly. I mean,
Someone's gonna get that sucker. And Dave, I told you I'd bring this thing up. It's still in my plastic, but the NWA Dome Globe. It's a nice belt
yep.
too. Classic
Hey,
title. But the one I like, Dave.
you like
good
your
old
blue baby.
good old baby blue. Yeah, this is the NWF one, and very good replica of that title. So we're giving that stuff away. And the thing is, like, people are saying, well, why are you giving away all that stuff? Because I just want to, there are going to be people that'll vote that maybe have to do a little research on our website to kind of see who's who they want to vote for, and to take the time to do that. I want to make it worth their while.
And we
So
want to say thank you to our loyal viewers.
exactly. So that's what that's all about. Um, we do have a few comments while we're waiting for Brian. I see, but they're not. For some reason, they're not coming into the stream, so I can't pull them in. But for some reason, I don't know why that is. Usually, we get comments that come in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't see any comments yet, but
It might just be, waiting for it to update. Um, in fact, maybe I should just do this just to make sure. But I guess I can read the comments. King Coop says, can't wait for the live stream. He's excited. Yep, that's for sure. We all are excited on that one.
yep.
And Gizmo says, Crusher, did you ever meet or talk to Brian Zane before he did his review of your company? No, I didn't. In fact, so when just like everybody else, I kind of found that review just surfing the web. It just kind of came up. I think it was in a search or something I was doing. I don't know how I I stumbled across it at some point. I thought, well, this is, and my first reaction was, what's he saying here? Back in, like, when I first wrote my book and documentary back, 20 years ago, there was a lot of, oh, how do I want to word this? Wrestling purists, I guess is the word to use, that kind of looked at our content and kind of just said, well, what are these guys are untrained, they're backyarders. What is this?
A lot of purists kind of wanted to snub us.
Snub us a little bit. That's the word. I'm not all of them, but there was definitely that crowd. And so when I
Yep.
first saw Brian's review, I thought, is this another one of these? But then when I watched it, it wasn't a complete. The first thing that struck out to me is it wasn't a complete bury. He didn't bury us, uh,
Right.
and he made it entertaining. It was kind of an entertaining piece, really.
You
And
know, I actually sat down and watched it again yesterday,
yeah,
just so, I'd be fresh with it. And, like most people, when I first watched it, I was like, why is this dude burying us?
right.
You know, and then, as you know, you and I sat down, we talked about it, and we both kind of came to the conclusion of, hey, free press.
Yeah, like because back in the day when I seen it originally, I thought, well, he spent 18 minutes and he did a real whole production of it, and it wasn't. It was actually kind of entertaining, and what really got me the most, and we'll talk to Brian about this when he gets in here, was the old man Tronson gimmick bit.
Yep.
Uh, and what was funny to us, for like Dave and myself, we knew Scott Tronson back in the day,
Oh, yeah.
and he wasn't an old man. That was an assumption that Brian made, for his thing. And he was just a young guy. He was in his 20s. He was yeah, he he didn't really fit that image. So to me it was funny just in that respect.
And,
And
in my respect, to me, I always viewed, quote, old man Tronson as somebody who was possibly jealous because we had the guts to go out and follow our dream.
yeah, I mean, um the Scott, the thing with Scott is he didn't really care. He wasn't a wrestling fan, right? That's number
Right.
one. And he admitted that much to me. He just didn't really follow it. So he never got the grasp of he wasn't a fan of that part of it. So that, doesn't help us in any way, shape, or form. And I think he kind of looked at us because we were kids, especially when we first started, because we were kids, he kind of looked at us like, what are these kids up to? And what are they doing? I mean, are they serious? Are they just fooling around? I mean, he kind of looked at it like that. He had that impression of us and judged us accordingly. And then, we do the cable grant and he tells us, I remember when I asked him for the cable grant application. I remember this like it was yesterday, Dave. I said, yeah, I'd like to have an application for this cable grant. And he looked up at me, he's sitting at his desk, and he looked up at me and he's like, there's no guarantee that you're going to get that grant. This isn't like free money. There's a lot of other producers in line for this grant. And there's no guarantee you're going to get it, with the finger point. And I like, okay. I said, I understand, Scott. Can I at least apply? You know, he didn't like us. There's no two ways around that. He did not like us. I
And
don't think that was primarily the why he got rid of the stage. I mean, it was a side benefit for him, but I think he really got rid of the stage for a good reason, which,
we'd like to think that.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm looking at it from my adult lens now, and I think it makes sense and why he got rid of that stage, really, from managing the studio and everything. I can see it, but it was an extra benefit for Scott because he knew that was going to put us in a limbo.
And, I think us winning that grant was kind of like rubbing salt in a wound.
Yeah, yeah, that was yeah, that was a time. But the Scott Tronson, I was saying with Brian Zane's review then, like let's get back to that, I guess. So then I thought, I'm gonna send him a message. I'm gonna say, hey, you know what? I thought it was good. I liked what you did. I'm not offended. I thought you did a good piece. And that's basically what I told him. And he was just throwing back that I reached out to him. And he immediately contacted me back and said, would you be up for an interview to talk about this? I said, absolutely. So we followed up with an interview, and on his channel, we did this interview where he kind of went over those burning questions he had at the time. And it was a good piece. And from that point on, Brian Zane and myself have remained good, you know, I don't want to say friends. We don't talk to each other on a regular basis, but we've stayed in good gracious with each other. No. And matter of fact, what's interesting about the segment he did is the comment section. If you go look at the comments, it continually gets comments to this day. It's just has a thing of its own. It's just to have a following of its own with the comments. It's crazy, you know.
And if I may play heel for a minute here,
Yeah.
to a certain extent, Brian kind of owes us his career now.
Well,
You
I mean,
know,
I wouldn't. I don't
we
know if I go that
springboarded
far,
him.
Dave. I mean,
We
but
gave him the springboard to get going.
his that piece that segment he did on us has over a 500,000 views. Um, and honestly, the tagline "Where were the parents?" was a good hook line for him, and also the old man Tronson part. It's just it's it's what everybody clings to. It's really pretty cool that way, I think. Um, some other questions here. I wish I could bring these in. I don't know why this isn't working, Dave. Usually they come up in here in our comment feed, but for some reason
This week, they're not.
they're not showing up. But so I can't pull the comments in like I usually do, but I can read them. Damian Thorne says, Sean, how old were you when you first saw Brian Zane's review? Okay, so that was in 2013. So I would have been, was that 10 years ago? So I'd have been like 40, 43, 40, 43. And the NWF. So when I did the documentary, I was 24, 25 or so when that documentary came out in the book. And
Yep.
most of the publicity and the press and all that kind of stuff was happening around that time. Brian came along and did his review well after the hype of all that. So that was like, there wasn't a whole lot of reviewing of our stuff or anything going on at that time. So it's like, it was kind of like, oh my, here's another one. I'll tell you, I've had that documentary guy has gotten a lot of reviews. One of which was Two Sheds Reviews. I don't know if they're still out there, but they reviewed it. And I think they're over in Europe, I want to say. But anyways, they gave it a good review. But then the guy went on to review the first Armory DVD we did, one of those Armory card
Yep.
DVDs. And he just buried us on that. He was looking for textbook professional wrestling, picture perfect. And obviously, we weren't there yet, especially on that card.
Yeah. I mean, you think
Uh,
about it. That armory card, the May show, was 86. You were 14, 15 years old. And of course, we're not going to be professional with capital P.
right. Yeah, I mean, um, that was, but his review though was just, it was. I don't know if it's still out there. It might be, it might not be, but man, he really gave us a hard review on that. The documentary gave us flying, a good review, but he did not like that first Armory. He thought it was, the wrestling was just trash. He really buried us. This guy did this Two Sheds review, and is what it is. So, I've had those kind of reviews. And so, looking at Brian's, I didn't treat Brian's the same just because he gave us credit where credit was due in that review, if you notice.
Yep. I wish you had
And
the footage so the fans who haven't seen it yet could watch it, you know.
well, I think a lot of, we really pushed it last week to let people go take a look at it. I'm pretty sure guys did. Um, Another comment from King Coop. Gosh, I don't know why I can't get these comments in, guys. I'm sorry. We normally bring them in every week, but they constantly are revising things on EVMux, and they might have done something where this part of it isn't working right now. Who knows?
And, because of all the solar flares, that could have something to do with it too.
That might be why we're not seeing Brian right away too. I just thought of that. The solar flares maybe his cell service is still out or something, and he was going to be connecting through us with his phone. Who knows? But hopefully we get Brian in here soon. We're just waiting for him to connect, and I haven't heard nothing from him as far as him, saying he's running late or not going to be able to make it or anything like that. So we're just waiting for Brian to show up here.
And as the regulars know, we're good at winging things.
Yep, we just keep rolling with it until he shows up. But anyways, the Brian's review I thought was honest. Oh, I was going to say another comment from King Coop. He said Brian Zane's honest review of the NWF. I still couldn't get over the old man Tronson running gag he did, but Tronson did seem like an ass. Just saying. And good observation there, King Coop. He was. The way I explained Tronson, if people want to get an idea of what he's like, do you remember the Harry Potter movies, Dave? I think we've all seen
Vaguely, I
them,
mean,
right?
not
At
one of
one
my more
point.
favorites, but
Not mine either. But remember, was it Professor Snape? Was that the guy's name? In
I believe so.
that actor, the way he sounded and the way he looked, that when I seen that and the only reason this comes to mind is because for a while there when me and Charlie went out to Los Angeles and met with Warner Brothers, there was a time where they were looking at doing a movie on us. I don't know if I've ever talked about that. I should probably talk about that sometime. But anyways, in their treatment and everything, they were looking at actors trying to attach to the treatment, to go pitch it to the studios and stuff. And I had mentioned, whoever that actor is, he's a spitting image of Scott Tronson, for that character. Because his demeanor in that movie and the way he looked and sounded, that was Scott. The movie never happened. They were going to do a movie on us, Dave, at one point on our story. It was going to be kind of like a Sandlot type movie. Wrestling's part of it, but it's more that Rat Pack neighborhood type of thing.
Yep.
And they had a treatment done up, and they were looking at different actors to kind of attach. So that's what they do. They get actors to attach to it, and then they go pitch it. And that's how they get funding. It's a very interesting thing. I was paid a retainer, so they had the rights and everything. It was a very interesting time. I'm surprised I've never talked about that. I've never talked about that, have I, Dave?
Not publicly. I mean, you and I have
Yeah.
both talked about it, but
That's a whole interesting story in of itself. But anyways, yeah, he was. Scott Tronson was kind of he was a jerk to us.
you know,
He looked for anything we did wrong. He looked for it. Just say that.
yep. You see, fans, what you'll realize here is yes, we pulled back the curtain to the NWF, but there's only so much stuff that we can fit into our show. And there's so much more that we have not shared.
Exactly.
I mean, to say the NWF was ahead of its time is an understatement.
And I do have a comment, Dave, that did come in. Facebook comments are coming in for some reason. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know why our YouTube ones aren't coming in, but this is Chad Ronnebaum, Rockin' Ronnebaum, one of our alumni. He said he learned thing about the video, the before and after. I'm not sure what video you're referring to, Chad, if you're referring to the Brian Zane's review or what's the before and after. But that's Rockin' Ronnebaum in the house, folks. Good to see him there. I don't know why the YouTube comments are coming in. Let me keep reading these comments while we wait for Brian to connect. I hope it isn't the cell outage thing, Dave. That's a good point.
Yep.
That might be what we're dealing with here, is why I haven't even heard a thing from him, because he might have a cell phone outage going on over there. Sky Sports Video News says, I was hooked with Old Man Tronson 2. Love the quote. Chad was referring to Brian's Where Were the Parents comment. So, Chad, it's interesting, since we're waiting for Brian, what did you think about the Brian Zane's review? I'm curious what your thoughts are, Chad. I'm talking to Rock and Roundabout, this user here. See what his 2 cents were on that. King Coop says, oh, did all of you lose cell service earlier? I have AT&T and I lost coverage while I was out earlier. Yeah, so I think that might be what's happening maybe with Brian. The fact that he's not here yet tells me there's something that's going on.
Yep.
And 412 Films in the house. Good to see you again. 412's been I think it's been a few weeks since we've seen you last. And he says, what's up, guys? It's good to see you again. Glad you're joining us.
Exactly. We love our regular viewers. We love new viewers.
And Dave, while we're waiting for Brian, I want to show this. This is, if I can, hopefully this works. I'm hoping you guys see all this. I'm going to add our website. So this is our official NWF website. Hopefully that's coming through, you guys. If you can see that, let me know in the comments. But what I wanted to show you about our website is we've added a new section. You'll notice there's an NWF Rewind section up there. And I'm in the website now, so I'm going to show you. If you go to NWF Rewind, this, first of all, if we're ever live, you're going to see it right there. So we're kind of seeing what we're doing here on the screen. So that video shows up there. And there's the links right to our Facebook group, our YouTube group, and there's a subscribe now button. But the biggest thing I wanted to show you this for is this: we have our NWF Rewind show schedule, so you'll know when we're going to be live next. So all these green dates in here, this is when we're going to be live. So that's a great way. If you ever want to know when we're going to be on next, this is going to be a great way to see it. As you see, in January and February, we went live quite a bit. Every week except the 8th, but we will be going every other week going forward. So, yeah. But I just wanted to point out the NWF Rewind section now so that you can see that. It's kind of a nice feature from the website. And, yeah, so get this off the screen here.
And while Crusher's doing that, I'm going to remind Rock and Ronabaum, don't forget about next week. You're welcome to join us live and in living color for our Wrestling Roundtable next week.
And I see we got a bunch of comments here. People like the website. They notice it's been updated. Yeah, I mean, we updated that website about a year and a half ago, really, and it needed an update. You know, the old website was so dated, and we needed to do something.
And I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I have nothing to do with updating the website. That's all Crusher Crossen.
By the way, here's another Facebook comment. What up, guys? This is, his name is Cole Behan? I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Somebody from our Facebook feed that's joined in. Thank you for joining us. We're just waiting for Brian Zane to get connected in. We're hoping he isn't having any cell phone glitch outage thing going on with all that crap that happened earlier today. You know, it might still be affecting things.
Yep, I mean, it started around 3:30 Central Time.
Yeah,
here in Minnesota.
I know it's hit and miss. It just depends where you are and what service you have. And
it's been all the carriers, from what I understand. You're just lucky out there where you're at, Crusher.
Okay, so yeah, here's what Rock and Ronabaum was saying. When people ask him for a quick breakdown, he shows them the Brian's video of Where Were the Parents to give them kind of a, you know, an assessment of what we, you know, he likes to use that, and I can see that. Um, this is kind of funny. He says, but yet you got my last name right, but everyone in the wrestling world calls me Cole. Cole 412. All right. Cole 412. I wonder if is that the same as 412 Films? I don't know if that's the same person from YouTube. Who knows? Because we have a YouTube user for 12 Films. It usually joins. I don't know what the heck's going on with YouTube, you guys. I'm only seeing Facebook comments. That's weird. It's technology. Maybe that has something to do with this stupid solar flares and everything that's going on is affecting our comment feed even. Who knows? Yeah, so that is Cole. Yeah, so he is 412 Films. So yes, he's jumping on Facebook. That way we can at least bring his comments in. By the way, with Facebook, if you look at the description, there's a little thing you can do there in the description that will actually show you properly. So it won't just say Facebook user. It'll actually have your name and everything. And your whatever your picture is. It's a one-time thing. You just got to go do that, and then you start showing up properly. That's for all you Facebook users. Remember that. Just look in the description. You'll see that.
Then we can recognize you properly when we read your comments.
Yep. So, yeah. But, yeah, I'm just hoping Brian gets in with us here soon. Like I said, he was really looking forward to being here, so I only can imagine what's postponed him.
Exactly. You know, I mean, you look back at the way the week's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a heck of a week with these solar flares causing all this trouble. That's crazy. Gizmo says, Crusher, we have the time. Tell us more about your movie. I think that would make an inspiration film. So the way that happened is this. You guys know how I am with the NWF. I'm a self-promoter, right? I just take the bull by the horns, right? This was before I even wrote my book or documentary. I decided that I wanted to, I thought we had a very unique story in what we did. So what I did is I went and searched online, and I found out in those days it was a fax number database, and I got fax numbers to all the production studios in Hollywood. And I purchased it for like 10 or 20 bucks it cost, but it was fax numbers. So then I put a pitch line together, it's just like a little paragraph. When you pitch something to Hollywood, I found out years later that it's usually even shorter than that. You usually want maybe 2 or 3 sentences, and that's it. That's a proper pitch. But I did more of a paragraph, that kind of write up. And I faxed that to all these production studios in Hollywood. And let me tell you something. I had a dozen producers calling me that very night of interest. They were very interested. I can't even remember the names, but I remember, some of the people calling me had been involved in some pretty amazing things. I remember the guy that did the, different series that they did. I forget. And the biggest one was the Walper Group. They're the ones that actually paid me a retainer out of all this, because they knew that they asked how I did this. I told them I just pitched everybody in Hollywood over fax. So they knew that the whole entire Hollywood got the news at once. So they wanted to have some exclusive rights for the story. So they paid me a retainer. It was like $300. It wasn't a lot, but it was a retainer to give them the rights. So if anything happens, they're attached. And I learned kind of quickly this is how Hollywood works. So for it was like a 6-month retainer or something like that. They had the rights to the film, and they started working on it. They put a treatment together. They kind of told me the direction they want to go. And just so you know, guys, if they would have done this, it's not like it's been a whole lot of money for me. I basically sign off the rights to the story, and you just get a very small royalty for that. So it wouldn't have been it would have been more for the fame and notoriety, really, and the exposure to what we did. That would have been the payoff. And it might have boosted my DVD and book sales that I eventually did, if something ever happened. But anyways, their treatment was much like, I remember the treatment they did. It was very, because Charlie and I, we were in at that time, then after that happened, like a year or so goes by, because we were working with the Walper Group for several years on this, and they're a division of Warner Brothers, so they're part of Warner Brothers, and we then produced the documentary, The Untold Story, and we started putting it in film festivals. We went out to New York and did one there, and we did one in Los Angeles. And when we were in LA, I let the Walper Group know we're in town, so they invited us out on to their studio in Warner Brothers on the lot. We were invited in. And you don't just drive into these studio lots. It's secured. It's fenced off. We had to have security clearance just to get through the gate. And it was
Yep.
it was amazing, you guys, seeing this. I just had no idea how big this was. This was like a city within a city. They happened to be filming an ER episode that day, so there's all sorts of people running around in doctors' surgical gowns and stuff during lunch break, and they have a little general store thing there in the middle. And I remember when we parked the car, Charlie and I parked the car, and next stall over was George Clooney's parking stall, and his car was there. We parked right next to him. But anyway, we talked to them out there. They showed us the treatment they were doing, and this treatment was much like a Sandlot movie. That's the direction they kind of wanted to go. The wrestling was going to be part of it, but it was the Rat Pack neighborhood and all the shenanigans and close knit, tight group type thing. And
So it would have been a fairly accurate story.
yeah, it really would have. And it was, we were thrilled. I was just thrilled that they were interested. And Hollywood moves in very, very, strange directions. And
Strange directions.
And oh, by the way, guys, I just got word from Brian. He's coming in. So the wait was worth it, folks. We're going to have Brian Zane here shortly. So stand by for that. But anyways, let me finish up on the story. Just want to let Brian know I got his message. That's kind of where they were. So then, that goes back and forth. Here's the thing with Hollywood, you guys, and I learned this. What's exciting one day can just evaporate the next.
Yep.
It's the way Hollywood works. So it's like, yeah, there was some when I first pitched it, yeah, there was some excitement there, and you think, oh my gosh, they're gonna do something. Something's gonna happen. You think that, but then you realize fairly quickly that there's a lot of hype in Hollywood, but it can fizzle. And I remember one producer telling us at the time, if you would have come to me 5 years earlier, this thing would be a done deal in his mind. Meaning if we were at the hype of the, it would have been around the time when wrestling had the peak ratings and everything. Monday Night Wars during that era.
Yep.
Yeah. So guys, that's kind of the Hollywood story there. What happened back in that point in time? It's an interesting story. It's, but that's what they were looking at when they were thinking of doing something on us back in the day. I was thrilled. Like I said, I was just thrilled for the attention and getting a retainer. They paid me a retainer, but nothing ever came of that, folks. So, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we are ready to go. I know we've delayed you a little bit here, but we do have Brian Zane in our studio. We're going to pull him in here, and we're going to get started with the show. So,
if you're ready, Brian, give us a thumbs up.
Yeah, if you're good to go. All right, sounds good. So let's switch over to and bring in. He is the host of Wrestling with Regret, ladies and gentlemen, and that would be none other than Mr. Brian Zane.
Yes, and he is also very apologetic. I'm sorry I didn't get to the live stream in a timely fashion. I had it on my phone, but sometimes real life gets in the way, and I humbly apologize. I feel terrible.
Brian, you don't have to apologize. When we go live and we expect to have to deal with wrinkles, no problem. We're just glad you're here with us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's fun to come back here and be. I helped promote it last week. We did a little chat, and I'm really excited. To be here, and obviously NWF was something that I kind of hooked on to. Early on when I started the YouTube channel, and now I'm here, 10 years later, still going strong, but a lot of people still tell me that the NWF review is one of their favorite episodes all time, and that was one of the first ones I ever did.
And I want to point out to all of our viewers to check out Brian Zane's channel, youtube.com/wrestlingwithregret. It's a great channel. How about 366,000 subscribers the last time I looked?
Yeah, it's somewhere around there. But it's wild, just how long the channel's been going and how much it's grown. In those first couple of years, how long it took me just to get like 1,000 subscribers. And then after a certain point, I hit this point, all of a sudden everything's kind of blew up from there. It took 2 years to get to that point, though.
Right. I mean, and it's funny, you mentioned that review, and we talked about it a little bit earlier with everybody as we were waiting. It's got 500,000 views, and when I first seen it, it was nowhere near that. And
Right.
people are asking me, how did I come across it? Well, I was telling them, I just kind of stumbled across it on the internet, and I was used to seeing our reviews on our stuff more so when we first put it out. Yours came along a little bit later, and there wasn't a whole lot of reviewing going on at that time. So I remember seeing it, and I'm thinking, because Brian, I've had reviews. Two Sheds reviews comes to mind. They gave us a good review on the documentary, but when they reviewed our first Armory card, they just trashed us on it. Okay, it wasn't professional with a capital P style wrestling, and they let us know. So sure. I've had reviews where it's been rough. Yours, like I told the viewers, it was a little. I mean, yes, you were thrashing, but it was an honest review, and you didn't completely bury us. You gave us credit where credit was due. So that's the way I looked at it.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like 10 years ago, I think I was a lot more like caustic. I was like definitely trying to fit that mold of like angry, nerdy guy. And so I think I was more inclined to, be more like trashing and more kind of like insulting stuff just in general. I think that my stuff today is a lot more like level-headed and, dare I say, positive in many respects than like it would have been. So I think if I came across NWF like today, I think I would probably even be more like praise it even more than like I did, because I think I do recall giving it some props. I think the fact you guys were able to kind of make this thing, like you made money off it and you had this whole like side hustle, you had an audience, like that's phenomenal. And I think that's the kind of growth and marketing that regular wrestling promotions even to this day dream of, like
yeah.
What a hook. Child wrestlers, come and see them. That's amazing,
Well, we were around at the right time too. You got to remember the 80s, professional wrestling in the 80s was really at a peak, with the whole WrestleMania thing kicking off. I mean, the popularity of wrestling, we were at the right time for that part of it.
And we're in the right area.
Yeah, and Minnesota was a good place to be just because of, one of the hotbeds, right? So it's just, you're in good company in that area and that market. But what we're going to do, Brian, and because I know I want to kind of show you what we're going to talk about here. We're going to go over the evolution of the league. And what I've done is I've got some videos that I put together. They're like less than 3 minutes each, but it's going to cover the 4 years that we were around. So it's going to cover the first year in 84, then we're going to go to 85, 86, 87. And what I want you to do is, these videos, the idea is, our viewers seen these last week when we had Carmine Sabia on with us, because he had not seen any of this, and he didn't even see the documentary. And so for him to be able to see that, it gives you kind of a snapshot of the year, of kind of what the show looked like, what it was, how it looked. And what I want to get is your perspective then as you see this, what you're thinking, what are your thoughts on it? So I'm going to go ahead and play our first video, and we'll watch this, and then what we'll do, then we'll come back and we'll just talk a little bit, and then we're going to kind of get through these 4 videos, and then we'll start, talking about the whole thing, right? Plus, we're also going to talk about your review. I brought in some clips of that as well that we'll discuss. Okay, that's going to be all good. All right, so let's take a look at 1984, folks. For those who have been here before, you've seen this. We're going to watch it again. Let's take a look.
Hello, folks. Welcome to the TWA, the Major League of Kids Professional Wrestling. We got some great action today with the likes of Todd Chillicampa. You'll be seeing him wrestling a great bout. What is this going to be, the pile driver? And there it goes. No, it's going to be the backbreaker. The inverted body vice, call it what you will, but it is still a submission hold. Andy the Ripper against John Fritz. And the size difference is nothing short of enormous. But John Fritz is a tough little scrappy wrestler, and I'm sure he'll make good out of it.
Kind of like a snake, you never know where those legs are going to come from. There it is, a flying drop kick to the midsection. And Merciless Mike in a bad way now. Where's the Crusher when you need him most? Jackknife, I got to admit, I've never seen you come out with any more fervor and more hatred and move faster against an opponent than you did tonight. You look mighty impressive, Jackknife. Why is that?
Well, thank you for once.
As you throw him against the... He gets thrown out of the ring for... 1, 2... headbutt. 2, 3... He's got something in there. He's got something in the mask. Crusher trying to take off the mask.
Merciless, thank you for taking over for me. I'm watching that guy's mask. That guy's got something in his mask. I can see it bulging. The Orlando leg lock, I believe he calls it. Figure 4. Rich Walker does not submit as he grabs the rope. As Peterson got a sleeper hold on a Superfly Rich Walker. And I got here with me Pretty Boy Peterson, who, if you ask me, doesn't look all that pretty. But
Fabulous one. Don't you get that mixed up, okay?
sorry, I just returned.
Better be. But I've got 2 wrestlers already in my ranks. Derek Nash and Heath Peterson. Pile driver he likes to be called. You dead cross and you dead Ackerman.
I got him in. Sort of like a bear hug. Oh, face. Got the iron claw on him. Break it.
Will it be enough? Oh, he tries to pick him up. He reverses it. It's gotta be hurting. That's the end of the match.
So there we go, 1984, Brian.
Oh man, so many emotions running through my head when I saw this. There was a yeah. Sorry, I had my mic on mute. There's so many emotions going through my head right now, watching that. Like charm and whimsy, this youth, having this fun, and all of a sudden you see this kid that's a clang, slam their leg on the apron. Like, oh my god, like I got sore watching some of that. Man, but it's just, kids are resilient. I think that, a lot of those, clearly that y'all were fine, but there was definitely a lot of hard hits in that one. That's an unforgiving looking ring, man.
Oh man, you don't know the half of that. That had no give. That wasn't a ring. It resembled a ring, but it wasn't a ring. And I think you pointed out in your review, you couldn't even hit the ropes. So that was really the problem with that ring. But before I go to the next video, I want to show I'm going to kind of highlight what was going on in the media. So this was the first newspaper article that was done in 1984 on us. A video kid Crusher Crossen, just like Gagne's boys. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty sure you can be rest assured Vern seen this. Twin Cities Reader, free paper in the Twin Cities. His name being in the title, I'm pretty sure he heard about it. But that was the first of many articles that would get written about us. But that one, when you're 14 years old and you got a paper writing a story about you for the first time, man, you think it's like national. It feels like national news to you,
It's pretty neat. There's a certain high you get when, you wind up in the media,
Yeah. Okay. So Brian, we're going to go to 1985 now and take a look at that video. And what happened was, as you know, in the documentary, Scott Tronson got rid of the stage, so we had to find a new home. And so 1985 pretty much covers all of our garage, what we call the garage studio days. This is where we're in the garage.
All right.
So let's take a look at this transition now, another year of the show. Okay?
All right. Can't wait.
Here we go.
Crusher gets dropped. Oh, clothesline to Crusher. Oh, throws him up against the other turnbuckle. Oh, clothesline right in the face. Right in the neck area. That was painful. Dynamite Dude takes it over. Oh, and Dynamite is showing off his muscle.
Did you see the way I just totally mutilated the Butcher, so-called? Butcher Bulldog, give me a break. Butcher Bullfrog. You hurt me! Give me that chain! You hurt me! There by Rough Ryan. He's going for the body slam, yes! Picked him up like a wet noodle. Another one! Crusher Crossen, not knowing what to expect from this Little League champion.
Okay, let's get back to action. Throws Rough Ryan against the ring. Flying drop kick, did you see it? We'll tell you about pro wrestling, kid style in Anoka. Bob Bruce with more next.
No, two.
Yeah, he looks like he's in a lot of pain.
Fans are saying Ace's waist. You can hear him.
Hey, we're ringing the bell here. This has gone just a little bit too far.
Ace! I've been humiliated before, but this was uncalled for. Now, if you got enough guts, come up here.
Well, it looks like we are having the arrival of Crusher Crossen against Todd the Bod as he circles the ring. Oh, he looks mad, folks. He looks mad. Kid Kelsey. It's Todd the Bod being worked over by Crusher Crossen. As we hear the bell, Kid USA Kelsey, for some odd prone reason, does not want to get in the ring with Cowboy Taylor. Pretty Boy Taylor, that is.
I was in Florida once.
What in the world is going on here? Just an all-out brawl. Your winner, the heavyweight championship of the world, Ace.
So there we go, 1985 in the garage, Brian.
Oh man, I don't. The guy, the kid who said that was uncalled for. That's my favorite kid in the whole video, especially at the end. The face he makes a split second before the other kid takes his head off. He got laid into. That was impactful. That was also. Is that the first time we start seeing like old kid Steve, the one who's like a grown ass man?
Right, Steve Engstrom. Yes, he showed up there. You've seen him in there. We'll talk about him as we get through all these videos.
And one point I'd like to make, you saw the blonde-haired boy that Pearl Harbor,
Kelsey,
the one that you were talking about?
Yeah.
He was one of Sean Waltman's first opponents here in Minnesota.
That's right.
Really?
Yeah, and Pro Wrestling America with Eddie. Yep.
Yeah, that's a small world.
But media-wise, at this point in time, what we had, well, another thing I was going to point out, this is the coverage too. By the end of 1984, this is the coverage map of the Metro. These were all the cable systems we were being aired in every week. So, having that kind of coverage around the Metro during a time when cable was really viable, it isn't today. Community television's dead. But during this time,
I remember when I was a kid, in my teenage years, I was discovering what cable access was like in Portland, where I'm from, and cable access community television was still a thing. Well into my high school years, and I saw there was a wrestling show or two I would like flip on accidentally, and I thought that was the coolest thing, and I wanted to find out how I can get involved in that somehow. And I tried to start doing like community TV, but there was never any kind of opportunity that I could find. But it wasn't really until YouTube became a thing that I was able to, produce videos and stuff. But I always have a fondness and an affinity for that like cable access stuff, because I was like kind of watching the tail end of that era.
Right. And for us, cable TV was our YouTube. It was our way to get something out to everybody. because we didn't have the internet yet.
Yeah, cable access was lawless, man. You had a lot of weird stuff and a lot of experimentation.
Yeah, there was different, Wayne's World, the whole thing, but
yeah.
Also, I guess I was going to cover the media here for this time period. Obviously you've seen it in the clip. There was the Eyewitness News came out and did their report on us, which was a big thing for us at the time. And also at the end of the year, the Minneapolis Star Tribune ran their feature story in the Sunday paper, which, for me, seeing a colored picture at the time, this was during the days of black and white papers, and the color was just coming in. And man, I was like, I couldn't believe it because they don't tell you they're going to do all this.
What a shady caption that is. Stations will do the same for you, even if you have little money or talent. Like, come on.
Right. I know. I've always, it's a love-hate on that tagline there, but I know what you're saying. But, the wrestling in 85, as you've seen, having that version of a ring was a little bit better because we could hit the ropes and we could go off the top ropes, even though we didn't have the ceiling height. But it was a little bit more functional, but it still wasn't a professional wrestling ring, at least not yet.
A little bit more stable.
Yeah, a little bit more stable.
It was a proper square this time. It wasn't a rectangle for starters.
Yeah, it was a square. But, the garage gave us the environment to really, we had complete freedom and control there. Like, we didn't have Scott Tronson running in saying, keep it down, guys, which he would do. So you weren't under that umbrella of other rules that you had to follow. So that was a little bit, and quite honestly, that ring or I don't even want to call it a ring, but that stage in Group W, we were never going to grow the wrestling. The wrestling would never grow in that environment because, like you said, Brian, it hurt. You couldn't take the major bumps.
There was no way to progress the abilities in that ring.
Couldn't progress. This ring wasn't a whole lot better either, though. I'm not going to fool anybody. There was no giving that thing either. But at least we could hit the ropes, and that felt like we could develop things a little bit better. All right, let's take a look at 1986, guys, and we'll go to that year. Probably our biggest year of growth, Dave?
Biggest
86?
year of growth and biggest year of publicity, I want to say.
Yeah, I would agree. Let's take a look at the video. Let Brian catch up on this.
And for reference, I am 1 year old at this time. So
and 1 year in 86. So you are an 80s kid. You just were a youngster.
Oh, now I feel old.
I'm technically an 80s kid, yeah.
All right, let's take a look at 86.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the NWF. Super E's, I got a big surprise for you. My tag team partner, Mr. X.
Oh my gosh, I cannot believe it. The Super D's throw Mr. X against the rope. It's the...
Oh, he went over the top rope.
From the other way,
This guy is some, looks like he's been wrestling alligator, and he belts the ref one.
Rattlesnake, you're a bit vicious. I think some of the things that you did tonight.
Of course I'm vicious. What do you think they call me, a rattlesnake?
welcome to the NWF Junior Professional Wrestling.
Takes him down. Certainly will get another shot for the title. Oh, and a clothesline. And he gives him a drop kick. Whoa!
I'd like to have a rematch, but I've got bigger and better things to go on to.
You haven't heard the last of us, invaders.
You can't put the Barbarians down, Steenerson, or anyone else.
Dr. Destruction in. Oh, and a big kick. Not another one. Oh, flying head scissors. What a well-executed maneuver by Crusher Crossen. Butcher and Steenerson haven't stopped double teaming since they got in here. A big body slam. We need help, ladies and gentlemen, for Kid USA Kelsey. Oh my! Look at this! We don't know how bad Kid USA Kelsey's hurt. That's
I hope I broke his arm. I intended to do that.
Just some of these low blood relief prod sets him up. Penalty prod. Oh, and a top kick. That looked good. Sets him up. Flying by first. 1, 2, 3 to go. Champion, you got it in the back. He's won the title back.
X, I heard you shouting your mouth off earlier. You're gonna go on to bigger and better things, so what much more can you get that's bigger and better, X?
Go for the pin.
Macho, you watch out, because I'm coming for you.
Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see you all next week. So long, everybody.
So 1986.
Yeah, well, there's definitely, like you said, the product certainly evolved by then. It's impressive to see the number of different venues you guys are able to hit. Yeah, and like I think it's just really cool, you know. Trying to think about something else I could add to it. I mean,
well, we got the working ring. That was the biggest.
The ring, yeah, and like
you're
incorporating more of the technology that was afforded to you back then in terms of how to do name keys and stuff like that. I think that's a nice little touch. Yeah, I think it's neat. It's really neat. Just the armory stuff, especially. I think that's kind of the coolest. Also, man, that big kick in the face. That one of the first door shots that there was. Like,
that was Terry Block. He did that super kick. He did it several times, and I talked to the guy he did it to, Dominic Dumas. I said, did he connect there? Because that looked like he caught you right in the chin. And he said he never remembers ever really getting hurt or connecting with it. He just came real close, but he made it look good.
So there might be a reason he doesn't remember. I'm just saying.
That could be. But yeah,
I do also say 86 was our biggest year of growth idea-wise. Because once we started doing the armories, we started getting more and more ideas for what we'd like to do.
Yeah. And then hooking up with Eddie Sharkey. It was after the first armory event that Steve and I met Eddie. And Eddie already heard the news of our first card. And he's right, first thing out of his mouth was, you and I, we need to do an event together sometime. Was first thing Eddie said to me as soon as I met him. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, and of course, me at 16, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I wanted to do it right now. Let's figure it out. But it took a few months to get that put together. In the news, as far as how the media was looking at us, our Anoka County paper did this really nice big newspaper spread, cover story that gave us a lot of publicity. But the biggest thing that was happening were, the Star Tribune was covering us. See if I have I thought I had another. Well, I guess I guess that'll work. This is just like a kind of an assortment of some of the clippings. I had a lot more. I found more in the archives, but I went to the Tribune archives and got a lot more. But this is kind of an idea. They could put us in Spectator Sports, or they'd put our match results in the paper. And that was, you see that kind of thing. It kind of feels like validation for you, really.
I wonder if Slick Steenerson is related to Kevin Steen.
No, I don't believe so. He
distant relative.
Yeah, they wanted to call. They had him change his name to Slick Steiner because they thought he looked like one of the Steiner brothers, in the PWA. Mm-hmm. So I remember they changed his name to Slick Steiner. That was what Ray Webby wanted to do at the time. Who was kind of behind the scenes with Eddie. But another thing, this is an interesting. I came across this in the archives. I never realized this. But the week we did our big card at the Armory with that big sellout that we talked about in the documentary, I guess I forgot about this. Because when you book the Armory, you got to book it a couple months out. I don't know what the AWA is doing. And here we got Saturday, we have us, and then Sunday they had their big event at the Civic Center.
Yeah.
This is not what you want to do, folks, when you're promoting a card. You don't want to go up against the big league on that same weekend. You would want to go before or after, right? Another weekend.
But still, there's the fact that your stuff shared print space and shared a column with the AWA. I think that's pretty neat, even if, it's like maybe people don't want to make it to the AWA.
Right. And if you notice in Monday's paper, when they did the results, they put us right in there again, like you said. But look at the attendance of the AWA, 4,980. We had 450 at the Armory. So just to draw a tenth of the crowd that they drew, I mean, on the same weekend, that's it goes to show you the popularity, honestly, of wrestling in general at the time,
And like I was telling Crusher right before the show, okay, we drew 450 people, and we were turning people away because we were being told no more people entering.
Yeah, the fire marshal was getting on me, because we had a lot of people were standing. We filled up the chairs, so there was only standing room left. And that not the fire marshal, the janitor, he was in charge of the armory for the building, and he came up to me and he said, we have a capacity limit. You can only, and he points up to the thing on the wall. There can only be X amount of people in here. How many do you got in here right now? And I was just saying, I just checked with the counter. I think we got 300 and 350. I knew we had more, but I didn't want to say anything. So I just wanted the people to keep coming through the door, Brian.
Oh, I know. Yeah, no, it's like every once in a while you got to listen to the fire marshal, but no, I get it. That's quite a sensation, though.
Yeah, it was a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, and the fact that you drew a tenth of AWA that same weekend. Again, that's crazy,
And not only that,
the AWA at the arena that they were running had room for more people.
Right, and the AWA wasn't dead yet. It wasn't nearly dead yet. They still had some life left in them.
Oh yeah,
86. So
I mean, 86. That was Nick Bockwinkel, Stan Hansen era championship.
We'll talk about the AWA here when we get through the last video, but I kept them abreast to everything. I had a contact. His name was Roy Nelson, is who they put me in touch with. So everything I was doing, Brian, I was feeding Roy Nelson all the information. So they were well aware of what we were doing. Because they didn't know what to do with this. That was his exact words. He goes, "We don't really know what we're going to do with you yet, but keep me informed." So he always wanted me to call him and let him know. And when we ran that Armory card, I ran it with All Star Wrestling on the posters. This is Vern's trademark at the time. He was going after other organizations we read about in the paper that tell him that you can't use that phrase. And for whatever reason, he could have made it hard for us, but he tended to give us a pass, I guess you could say. He didn't come down on us for that. We'll talk about more of that though. Let's get to this final video then. For 1987, this is kind of the year. This is basically how the league, what it basically evolved into, I guess, in the end, I guess you could say. All right, here we go.
Kenny B here at ringside along with beautiful Bobby Ferrari. And Bobby, quite a show lined up for today.
Well, all I know is let's get on with the NWF action and let's get ready.
We'll be back after this word. He's coming out with a flying dropkick. He got him high. Hammered him to the mat. A knee drop. That could be it right there. It could be lights out for him. They're both struggling. Nobody can get the other one. Some Mexican, look out! Boom! Kabang! Right into the mat.
At the March 20th Anoka Armory, we are going for it. Macho.
I'll team up with Crusher Crossen, Invader 1, Dixie Dave, White Ninja, it don't matter. These guys, I'm gonna get them.
Big shoulder block by Randall. That could do it right there. That could be lights out. Wails him off the ropes. Here we come again. Big look out. Afternoon. Oh my, giant clothesline drilled him to the mat. Macho, Kid Kelsey again, this time a non-title bout.
Think you're funny? Non-title, huh? And everybody knows we're gonna be the champions of the future. Everybody knows we're the ones to look out for. We get put in with a couple of has-beens.
USA Kelsey at ringside here. Mr. Macho swinging at Kid Crusher Crossen. He caught him on. Oh my God! Right onto the mat. Open. And looks like a gut-wrench suplex.
Controversial match. Can't take it away from you. You are the champion.
Yes, it was controversial because Crusher Crossen lost his head. And we're going to see who the winner of this next match is. We're going to see who the true champion is, because right now, buddy, you got the title.
Your opponent on the 27th is none other than Dr. Dread.
What?
Doctor?
What are you talking about? I'm not putting my name on the line against him.
You know, it wasn't that long ago that Dr. Dread was one of the most feared and ruthless men in wrestling.
Down on the mat. What's he doing? Oh! And not looking in too much pain. A reversal!
Not another.
The pile driver! Oh!
A forward pile driver?
Break clean. Vicious forearms to the back, but each one perfectly legal.
Beautiful. Comes up. Whoa! Big clothesline.
A lot of power from the equalizers thus far.
Kids felt real well.
Hey, Pretty Boy Taylor agreed to wrestle Dirty Ernie.
What?
Sign what? Grizzly Stevens, listen up. You want me, you got me, fat man. Come get me. Crusher, you want me, you come get me. I'm right here right now. Let's go now. I saw you
Oh yeah, 1987, the final year really for us anyway with the NWF.
How did the grown men get involved? Like the announce team, like these are way older than y'all.
Well, that was so Brian, with that was one of the things I started to change in 86 and 87. I went to adult refs, and then I eventually went to adult announcers, with the exception of Jason Klassen, our one who was our age, but it was the image of the show. I was trying to give it a more of a professional look, you know? So that's how that is. And then in the end there, we kind of, whoever owned the ring owned the league. And I ended up selling the ring to Ernie Ellis. And in '88, he started taking over the NWF at the dry dock. And they did a actual mix of the kids and the adults. And then a few years, maybe the next year, Jim Mitchell comes along and swoops up the whole thing. And I had left by that point, but Jim Mitchell then took it over and turned it into the NCWA. And once he got his hands on it, he really wanted the ring. But once he got that, he replaced all the NWF guys with his guys.
Interesting. You know? I guess in that way, if you kind of like make all of your secondary characters in wrestling adults, then the children are really the attraction. They're kind of like, that's the unique selling point of NWF. I think definitely the wrestling gets a lot more competent. It doesn't look nearly as painful. Like there's some things that look like, if the arm bent another half inch in another direction, we'd be saying a different story. But for the most part, no one's like falling on their heads, and the ring looks better. And it looks like you guys did a show in a bar in one of those ones.
Yeah, that was the dry dock. I think you're talking about. It was it was a non-alcoholic bar. That's why they called it the dry dock.
Yeah.
That was really fun venue there, though. Tight corridors. Everything was tight. Kind of like, it was a lot like George's and Fridley.
Yep.
Tight atmosphere, but energetic crowd, in those dry dock stuff.
Yeah. I remember the first match I ever had kind of reminds you of that. Like no room, very tight around the ring. I think it was, I think you only had access to maybe two of the sides of the ring. And the sides you had were about maybe this much space to where people's feet were in the front row. So everything was crammed. You couldn't powder, you couldn't do nothing.
Right.
And the crowd
had to work stiff.
Yeah.
The crowd worked stiff, exactly.
Yeah, and it's funny. That dry dock crowd was interesting. I remember they showed a clip of me and Jamie having a match, and that particular match, I was a fan favorite on the show for years, and when I went up against Jamie, for some reason I got booed when I went out into the ring, and I'm like, what's going on here? And Brian, you know this. If you're supposed to be a baby face and you're getting heat like a heel, it messes with you. It kind of screws up your psychology and your way of thinking. So
I can attest to that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've always said it's easy to be a heel. You just have to insult the fans, but you have to want them to like you. You can do what you can to make them try to like you, but they ultimately have to cheer you if they like you,
Yeah, you have to earn the fans' accolades. You have to earn their appreciation for sure. But yeah, it's a lot easier to be a heel. It's a lot more fun too.
Yeah, that's for sure. So now that we've seen the whole evolution, I thought let's talk a little bit about the review you did on us back in the day. Where were the parents?
Time to face the music.
Well, I got a few clips. Let's see if I can find them here. When I'm kind
I
of
can't wait to watch back when I was like skinny and I worked out. So it'll be fun.
Well, while Crusher's pulling that up, Brian, how did you stumble across the NWF?
It was actually just it was a search in my local library catalog. I was looking up like what wrestling content is there on DVD or whatever the library has. I was putting like pro wrestling or whatever, and like amongst all like the WWE DVDs, I see NWF Kids Pro Wrestling. Like, what the hell is that? And so yeah, I watched it and I was fascinated. And yeah, so it was totally random that I just kind of stumbled upon it there. I don't know what it was doing in the Washoe County Library in Reno, Nevada, but I'm glad that it was there.
Yeah, I mean, you know why we're in the libraries so much? We're heavy in the libraries because when I wrote my book, first of all, when you put out a book, I did my book not knowing anything, and I realized I had to get into one of the distributors, Baker and Taylor, Ingram. If you don't get in these distributors, nobody gets your book. So, and it's not easy to get in with Baker and Taylor. They like to go with big publishers. They don't necessarily go with one-offs. But I luckily got my foot in the door with them. And once you get in their catalog, now you're available to be ordered from anybody that orders anything from the big Walmart, Best Buy, all of them. They use that catalog. But I then realized, and just learning from the internet, that libraries have a huge purchasing budget. And the way you market to a library is they have what they call school library journals. It's what they get every month, and they go through there, and that's where they decide what they're going to order for the library. So I ran ads in school library journal, and lo and behold, I got tons of orders to all the public libraries around the country. That's how we got into the libraries.
Yeah. Well, it's just it was definitely cool to find, and I think around that time, I was the idea of doing a web show where I kind of like poke fun at silly things in wrestling was still kind of like rattling around in my head. And so when I was looking for topics to discuss, I'm like, well, this I've got to talk about. So
well, speaking of poking fun, let's take a look at this first little clip that I basically picked little snippets of what you said and kind of what your reaction was in that review. Let's take a look at this first one I got for us. This is Brian Zane from his review in 2013 titled "Where Were the Parents?" If you haven't seen this whole thing, folks, when we're done with our show, you got to watch it. It's great. So here's the first segment.
All right.
One thing he could not control was when the Cable Commission awarded the kids' pro wrestling show a $500 grant for improvements.
What?
Sean was able to convert the stage into what would resemble a wrestling ring.
$500 got you those 4 posts and some ropes? Look at them, they're not even proper wrestling ropes, they're like ropes. That stuff hurts. Between the ropes and the carpet on the stage, it's amazing these kids didn't get rug burns and staph infections. But seriously, they get a $500 grant to do all that? That's more than $1,000 in today's money.
So I love that. I love that part. And, that made me realize that when we did the documentary, I didn't cover that quite enough. Because, you made a very good point there. $500 for 4 posts and ropes? Where'd the rest of the money go? And the money actually went for other things. The ropes and posts were part of it, but then the biggest expense was VHS tapes. Back in those days, a VHS tape cost like $10 to $15 per tape. And we needed a lot of them to do our circulation around the country and everything. So I used a good chunk of that money to stock up on VHS tapes because they were really expensive in those days. $15 back then is like $30 today. And some systems required 3/4 inch tape, and those were even more expensive. So I had to get some of them as well. So the tapes, and then the other thing then so the tapes and I was trying to remember, there was a third thing that we spent that money on. I think it was mainly, it was a 3/4 inch tape because
pizza parties.
Well, no, that came from the Armory money, but no, the 3/4 inch tapes were, I remember it was like $90 for one tape. Those things weren't cheap. That's what like the news stations use and everything.
Yeah, it was professional. Yeah, it was not used, in the home. It was a
Right.
professional grade, exactly. So,
So yeah, but I mean, I always your style, Brian, is very entertaining, and I still cracks a smile every time I watch this stuff. Even
well,
on
I
us.
tell you what, young me needs to slow down because that was some fast talking.
Well, and the other thing I'm going to say on this too, you guys, everybody's saying, well, he's making fun of you. Well, he is. Here's the deal. Like the politicians that get made fun of on Saturday Night Live, if they can't laugh at themselves and what's happening, there's something wrong. You have to be able, and I've said this today, we're in the entertainment business, folks. This wrestling's entertainment in every fashion. So if that's, Brian's, you're just presenting it the way you present your content, and I get it.
And the way I look at it is, for you to do a show on us, we had to have entertained you.
Yeah. Or
Well,
at least caught your interest.
Yeah, and like I said, it was very entertaining. It was like shocking in a way because it was just a culture I didn't really experience growing up. Because I got into wrestling relatively late. I wasn't surrounded by a bunch of kids who were also into it, and so I think like in another timeline, if I had gotten into wrestling when I was more like 8 instead of like 13. And I was around more, other boys who were into it. That would have been something that that would have made sense to me. But I think just from my upbringing and the way I was trained in wrestling and everything, my mentality, what wrestling was at the time, then I see this and I'm like, this just goes against. This is most unorthodox, and I had to tell somebody about it.
All right, let me pull up this next clip I got from your review. And we'll take a look at this one. This has to deal with the 26-year-old who said he was 16. Let's take a look at this.
The kid soon learned that Steve was not 16, but in fact 26 years old.
Okay, never mind. That is crazy. How do these kids not realize how much older he is? Have they never seen a 26-year-old before? I'll admit, I could be pretty naive at their age, but I think I would have been able to tell the difference between a 16-year-old and a 26-year-old. How would I know that? Because I have eyes! Plus, what the hell is a 26-year-old doing messing with a bunch of little kids? Not only is that 6 shades of creepy, he could have used his time more wisely by going to an actual wrestling school with adults if he wanted to learn how to wrestle.
So there we have Steve Engstrom.
I stand by everything I said then. My opinion has changed on some things in 10 years, but not that.
Well, let me just say this. It is, I understand your point, but I'm going to show you what we seen with Steve. I'm going to play a clip here a little bit more so you can kind of see it. When he was reffing in this match, this is kind of the best shot I got of what he looked like. You can see he was super clean cut shaven for that day, shaved. His hair was short, kind of a little messed up. He looked younger than what he was just from the way he presented himself that day, because he knew that he was older at the time. Now, we knew he wasn't, I think all of us knew he wasn't 16, but we thought maybe he's 18 or 19. We didn't suspect 26. But he just, when somebody shaves really close like that, when you get that real close shave, it makes it gives you the illusion of being younger.
I guess so. I've been confused for someone like 10 years younger, for a while. I've been blessed with a baby face. Of course, that's suddenly dwindling. But, I got confused for being much younger for quite a while. So, on that level, I can understand that. And I guess,
I was more, the thing with me, though, when I found out, Steve eventually came clean a few months later with his age. And I was more mad that he didn't tell me the truth to begin with. But then again, I understood, because if I would have known the truth, he would have never even made it to the first show. We had a real firm rule. You had to be a kid, under 18. We kind of stood by that. So I get your point, though. Let's take another clip
off,
here.
Though, 26 is pretty impressive, I guess, in a sense.
Well, the one thing Steve brought, though, he was good at bumping. In wrestling, he could bump, and he brought us up to another level that way in the ring, just from a technical standpoint. And I have to give him credit for that. If you ever, I had a highlight reel when we had Steve on as a guest showing all of the bumping he did for us, and man, he abused his body. You talk about taking bumps. He was doing it as good as anybody. And
Crusher, he was the one that did all the designing for us.
All those belts, yeah. He made really nice title belts for that time period. That we didn't know who Reggie Parks was. We didn't know how to get ourselves hands on a belt. And so for Steve to be able to make for what he had to work with, he made some pretty attractive looking titles.
Oh yeah.
All right, let's take a look at this next. I just have a couple more clips here I want to show. This next one is pretty much the theme of the entire review for Brian. Where were the parents? Let's take a look.
I don't mean to sound like a killjoy here, but it's a legitimate question that I'm going to keep bringing up. Where were the parents in all this? Did they know what was going on? The scale of it? Were they worried? Was there no supervision? I know that we hadn't quite gotten to the era we live in now, where some parents practically put their kids in bubbles to keep them safe, but someone should have been keeping an eye on them, right?
So, where were the parents?
Yeah. Basically. I mean, that was like a persistent thought, for sure.
Well, to answer your question, Brian, I came from a broken home. Dad lived one place, I lived with my mom. My mom was the one that drove me to the shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And my mom would be the one, she hated pro wrestling, but every time we had a big event, she was there. And she'd always joke around. She'd watch the match like this, worried about me throwing up my back or something. But she knew something I loved, so she let me do it.
That's how it was. The parents would drop the kids off. But here's the thing. You had made a comment in there that there wasn't a lot of difference with us and backyarders at the time in that review. But there was a difference, and in my opinion, and it's like this. The backyard wrestling that came after us, they had a little different mindset. They were trying to be the next Mick Foley. They wanted to be the Hardy Boys. They wanted to be, so it was all sensationalism and doing really outrageous things like jumping off of roofs and getting into the hardcore element. And we never went that direction. We were just trying to emulate what we were watching at the time. And we weren't trying to, the biggest thing is we weren't trying to hurt one another. That was never the intention ever. And, think about it. In the 4 or 5 years that we did it, I can count in one hand how many times somebody got hurt. And it wasn't like a going to the hospital hurt. I know I broke my finger once in a botched power slam with Steve, stubbed it. And that was one injury.
It was a match that you showed there.
Yeah, it was in that clip. But so, I mean, very few, and the reason is because we weren't trying to hurt one another. And the parents knew this. They knew that, and they watched the show as well. So they were keeping eyes on it that way when they watched it on cable. And, so they were, it's really hard to, I can sit here and say, guys, you just had to live in the 80s because it was a different era. That's how it was. And that's partly true, but me saying that doesn't do it any people, you'll never get it unless you actually lived it, and it's not, I'm talking about just in general, the way your parents were in those days, they say, go out and play, come back for dinner,
It is truly.
It was back when the streetlights come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's truly a different time. I think I was on the tail end of that being a thing at my age. So
well, let's look at this last clip. This is my favorite. And we have to talk about Old Man Tron. So let's take a look at this little series of clips in one.
Yes.
Having tempers flare during title matches were the least of worries when Scott Tronson...
Old Man Tronson! But school officials were resistant to the idea of kids coming in to wrestle in their ring, including the community school director, Mr. Daniels. I'll bet he's friends with that Old Man Tronson.
Things were about to get ugly when Scott Tronson once again interfered with the show.
Old Man Tronson!
I love it. I actually love it, right?
I've had people make references to Old Man Tronson ever since then. Like I've had no way to figure out how to put it on a T-shirt for that matter. But it's like it's been crazy. That's kind of taken on a life
of its own.
Exactly. It's been one of the most persistent, or one of the earliest running gags, or one of the earliest things that fans gravitated toward in the channel.
Yeah, I mean, it's what made me laugh the hardest, even when I see it the first time. And and like I told our viewers earlier, the reason it was funny for me is because I knew Scott Tronson, and if you knew the real Scott Tronson, he wasn't an old man. But the fact that you perceived him that way was what really, said, well, made it funny for me. I'm going to show you the only public picture I can get. This is the real Scott Tronson. That's what he looks like. This is probably about 15 to, I'd say 15, maybe 20 years later. So figure this guy much younger. But that was Scott Tronson. And I always said the way he looked back.
Basically.
I was going to say the way he looked back in the day was those Harry Potter movies, that Professor Snape character. The way he sounded and looked, that was Scott Tronson. When I seen that Harry Potter movie, I was like, God, that's Scott Tronson. It reminded me of him back in the day. But he's just a young guy, not a fan of professional wrestling. Didn't care for it.
Not a fan of kids running around his studio.
Yeah, that's for sure.
You know what? If I were him, I think I would be the exact same way. I can't even be bad at that. It's your job.
Yeah.
I've become one of them. I am the old man Tronson now. It's terrible.
So Brian, I was going to ask you then. So now that you've seen everything, and what would, if you were a young kid in the 80s and you happened to be seeing this in your area on cable and there was a way for you to join, would you be interested to want to be a part of that as a youngster?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that was something when I was a kid. Like, again, when I was 13 years old and I was just getting into wrestling, I wanted to try and figure out, like, what can I do here? Like, when's WWF coming to Portland? Like, when's, was there any kind of wrestling around here? And it was hard for me to figure out, what exactly existed out here. And I didn't really get to see anything until, until I was in college and I started training to wrestle. And that's when I learned about the indies and everything. So it's like, if I were that age, I would have been definitely, if I saw that, I would have definitely been into that, like at that age, 13, 14 years old. So.
And of course, a follow-up to that is, now that you're an adult, and I think you have kids, right?
Yes, I do.
I don't know if you have any boys or not, but if you had a son and he wanted to be a part of something like this, what would your response be to that?
I don't know. Like I said, I'm not a helicopter parent, but I'm just a very anxious parent. And I always get a little nervous when, like, the kids are roughhousing. I have 2 girls. And, like, so I just get, I just worry that they're going to, once someone's going to stiff each other, there's going to be a flying elbow somewhere. And it's like, I don't know why it terrifies me so much. I didn't have that dynamic with my sister growing up. So it's like the idea of, like, siblings fighting, like, it's just, But, like, I don't know. If I saw my kid, like, take an interest in that, I'd be conflicted about it. I think I would say probably not until you're older. Like, there have to be, like, an age limit. And you have to, prove, you can do X, Y, Z and be responsible and other stuff like that. So there would be a lot of caveats and a lot of discussions. But, I've thought about, if my kid wants to be a wrestler or something, or they want to get into that, I would probably tell her, it's like, you have to work hard at it. And there's like there's a lot you can do as a youngster, like, a lot of holds and like certain kind of roles you can learn. Taking bumps, like total flat back bumps and everything, is something that I'd be kind of nervous about until the brain's fully developed. But, that's it's a conversation for sure. But,
well, it's an interesting, and I can't relate because I don't have kids. So when you have kids, I'm sure it's a whole different mindset, and I can appreciate that, response that you have. But, kayfabe, we talk a little bit about kayfabe, on that, and I don't have the clip, but in your review, you kind of noticed that we were in the news report, we're talking about a match kind of scenario, how it's going to go down. And you're like, kayfabe, kayfabe, kayfabe. And that whole piece, by the way, was Larry Burnett wanted us to do something like that for his story. So we don't normally sit around and talk like that. But that was kind of for the news. But it was alive and well, as Dave will attest to here. in our league. And what I mean by that is when you came on the show, we didn't tell you anything. You came in and you were
Mhm.
explain how it went for you when you joined.
When I joined, I had a couple friends that were involved in the league, and all they told me is that it was kids wrestling professionally. And I went to the first Armory card. I talked to Sean personally about joining up, and he said, okay, be here at Fred Moore tomorrow morning. I walked down that flight of stairs, expecting, okay, I'm going to get some training before I'm actually going to be thrown in the ring. And it was, okay, you want to wrestle? Get in the ring. Got in the ring. I'm like, okay, how are we going to train here? They're like, nope, this is your first match. And if you survived that first match and you came back, then you got smartened up.
Yeah, we did that intentionally because we had so many kids come on with us that we would call one and dones. They'd show up and they just wouldn't come back the next week. Wasn't for them, whatever the case. And my thinking at the time, Brian, because I wanted people to think this was real. So I didn't want them to just go tattletelling on how we do things. So there was a trust factor. I didn't know if I could trust them for that right away. And it's also, like Dave said, it was to see if you'll come back the next day.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you guys kind of like made your own kayfabe. You made your own protective bubble. I mean, that's essentially what protecting the business is. Like, okay, well, if you're able to withstand this, then okay, we'll slow drip you, and we'll start smartening you up to the business and everything. So again, it's something that it's these thoughts that I wouldn't think about. At the time, only with the age and wisdom and time passing and everything, I get this additional perspective. It's like, it was a far more cool thing than I gave it credit for. And like, obviously you guys learned a lot of different skills, in the process of growing this business. And so, not everybody has a chance to do that. And I think that it's, I think the NWF, something that I wish I could have elaborated on a bit more in that video, 10 years ago, would be just kind of like, yeah, it's like, it was some admirable. It's shocking in a way, like from a certain perspective and in a certain place in time that I was at. But, when you just kind of look at it in the broad spectrum and you kind of, the bigger picture, it's just a really neat thing that, transpired in the 80s. And it's something that could really only have happened then.
right, you're right there. I was going to tell you we were gonna double back to Vern Gagne. I wanted to talk to about our relationship with him and all of this with you, Brian, and get your opinion. In 1984, as early as that year, I had sent tapes to Vern of our stuff. I figured when we had it look like a ring, this is the time to show Vern what we're doing. In my mind, looking back, I should have never sent those tapes. But I sent it to Vern because I had this, his office was in the phone book. I had the address. And I sent him the tape. And all I get is an 8x10 of Vern saying, "To my buddy Sean, best wishes," and an autographed picture, when I sent that tape in. And I thought, well, this is great. But what I wanted is I thought, he always did these local interview segments. Maybe he could bring us on one of those local interview segments to tell us what we're all about. My 14-year-old mind thinking here, folks. So then I didn't hear that. So I thought, I grew a pair and thought, I'm going to give him a call. So numbers in the phone book, and I call up and I ask for Vern Gagne. And I was so nervous, Brian. I'm 14 years old. I'm calling them. They put me on hold. And they asked who I was. I said, and then they put me on hold. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to get Vern here? I am so nervous. And then I get a guy come on the phone, and his name's Roy Nelson. I'm like, Roy Nelson? He goes, yeah, I'm Vern's agent. I said, oh. He goes, yeah, Vern can't talk with you, but I've been put in touch with you, and we got your stuff. Just don't know what we really want to do with it yet. But he goes, keep me abreast to everything you're doing going forward. Feel free to call anytime. But just, keep us informed. So I had an in. Right? So I did. Every single step we took, I let them know what we were doing, including all the Armory events and everything. I always kept them posted. I remember when I told Roy about our first Armory event, and I said, we're calling it Superstar Spectacular 86, and he chuckled. I said, is there something wrong? And he goes, oh, no, that just sounds like something we do, But so I'm pretty sure Vern was well aware of what we were doing through this, including all the media coverage. What do you think? What is your opinion, Brian? What would you think Vern Gagne would have thought of us from your perspective?
That's a tricky one because, I don't know if he would have found it whimsical, like, oh, these young rapscallions, like trying their best. I don't know if he would think it would expose the business. I don't know if he was that old school. Like, I don't know. I think, but it's an interesting question for sure.
Well, let me give you another. I should have pointed this out too. This is something that might help you think about it a little bit more. When KSTP did the news report on us, remember there was AWA footage in it?
Oh, that's right, yeah.
I had talked to Larry Burnett after I wrote my book. He was out in LA. He went on to go work for ESPN, the reporter that did that on us.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to let him know I wrote a book and everything, and wanted to know if he wanted a copy because I talk about him, and he did. But we talked about that report, and one thing I didn't know, but he told me, he goes, just so you know, when we did that, he goes, we had to contact Vern to get him to okay to let us use their footage in that story with you guys, and he okayed it. So that was an interesting little piece that I got out of Larry Burnett there.
There must have been some sort of tacit approval, I guess, kind of an endorsement in that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could have done it, but they had a very good relationship with Vern, and they weren't going to use it unless he said it was okay to use it, type of thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I just, so for me, I never did talk to Vern. I always talked to Roy Nelson, but, I always like to think that maybe part of him was admired by what we were doing, but at the same time, he always preached, kids don't try this at home. So I don't think he could, I guess what I'm trying to say is he isn't going to do anything with us, but he's going to cheer for us silently, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I'm sure that, I'm sure he wished y'all good luck, from a distance.
Yeah, and Eddie Sharkey was a whole different animal. He, I look back at that now and I think, well, Eddie just probably wanted to cash in. Eddie was doing bar cards of maybe 30 people, 40 people, and we'd do our armory card and get 350, and I'm pretty sure he wanted to tap into the popularity that we had at the time, locally, that is.
I mean, there's definitely something to glean from that. I mean, if it's, I think in a small town, small market, Minnesota, in a wrestling hotbed, like, there is something to be, there's some gold in them there child hills,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not to say that we're in a large area, but back when we were doing the show, the town that we were basing our promotion out of was probably 10 to 20,000 people. So it's not like we were exactly small market, but, we weren't LA or New York.
Right. And the other thing Brian doesn't ask you about, so when I first did my book and documentary, this is before even your review, it kind of got hit with mixed reviews, really. Back in those days, like in 2020, what was it, like 2024 or so when I did that, people looked at it kind of one of two ways. They thought, yeah, this is unique, but these guys are not trained. They're not professional wrestling. The way we look at professional wrestling, and there was like these purists, I like to call them, that there was a group of these people that wouldn't really even acknowledge us, didn't want to even mention us. I'll give you an example. Wade Keller. Wade was in the Twin Cities, and he showed up at one of our events at the Dry Dock when he first started out doing Pro Wrestling Torch. It was like he had maybe one issue done. And he came to the Dry Dock. I remember Jeff brought him over, and he goes, hey, I want you to meet this guy. His name's Wade Keller. He's starting out with a newsletter, and he was real thrilled to meet me. He had told me personally, he goes, I've watched you guys forever on cable, and I think it's great. I wanted to go to that. He wanted to go to the one armory card we had just did, but he had mentioned that Jim Crockett was in town because NWA came to town that same night we did our last Armory card. Again, bad timing on me. Here I am going up against Crockett for the first time in the area with the NWA. You don't want to do that. But he is saying that, he had to go to that. He just couldn't miss it, but he really wanted to see that one. And I see years later, I seen him in the PWA as well. He would cover my matches and always give me, we'd talk in the dressing room. And so when I wrote my book, I thought, I'm going to reach out to Wade, see if he might write a forward, since he had been a fan of the show back in the day, as he told me. Totally different Wade Keller at this point in time. He did not want to relate to his, knowings of what we did or kind of even associate with me. So I just would get crickets when I'd ask him, if he would want to do that. So some people distance themselves. I'm most afraid of tarnishing their own reputation by talking about us initially. I don't get that so much anymore because maybe people are more enlightened to what we did. They kind of know more of it. But back in the beginning, man, it was rough. It wasn't an easy story to get out there and get people to just accept it,
Well, I mean, Crusher, let's be honest. I mean, we've reached out to some of the alumni from the NWF.
Yeah.
And we've got alumni that, now that they're adults, they want to distance themselves.
Well, it's not that they distance themselves. Like what Dave's talking about, Brian, is we got some of the guys that I'm friends with them, but they just choose to not, come on the show or do any, we've had a lot of them come on as guests, but some of them just don't want to, they love the memories, but they want to leave it in the past. They don't necessarily want to move forward or talk about it. I've always said to each hero, and I don't hold any of that against anybody, not everybody's, look, I don't have any problem with that. It is what, everybody's different when it comes to that kind of thing. And then sometimes they're just busy with their lives, in the
For
state.
sure. Yeah. No, I mean, people have different, different priorities and stuff, and it's different times, different people. Like, I get that, but I think it's cool that you still have like a core group of guys who still, like have the memories and kind of want to keep the tradition alive, so to speak. So.
Yeah, it's a kind of a brotherhood. We stay in touch over all the years. And another question I was going to ask you is, we asked Carmine Sabia this last week. Do you think another group of kids could ever come along and recreate an NWF, if you will, and do what we did back in the day, do it again? Do you think it would ever be possible?
Well, you know what? It's interesting because we are kind of getting that in ways today. Like, I wish I could remember the name of the country right now, but there was this big thing that was on Twitter just a couple of weeks ago. These kids in Africa, I believe, that were doing these like wrestling moves and everything, and doing these shows on this kind of makeshift ring. And it gets this viral sensation because of just how well they're performing. And then they just did a crowdfunding thing to get them a proper ring to do these shows in. And I think that's one example. You see these kids recreating like wrestler entrances, and those go viral. Like, can you literally recreate the NWF Kids Pro Wrestling like in a modern setting? Maybe, maybe not, because there's like the whole issue of like a lot of pearl clutching and insurance and what have you and everything. And so I think that would be a hurdle. But like, could you get something that is like, as it gets far out there, it gets sent and distributed widely, across the platform, and do that at a relatively young age? Yeah, I think absolutely. If the marketing is there, if the kids are tech savvy and know how to promote, then I think absolutely you can get something like that. But it's all about who's going to try and take that leap and who's going to take that chance.
Right. Well, I tell you, it's been great talking with you, Brian. Rehashing the past a little bit, giving you a little bit, getting your insights on how you seen the league evolve. You got to see a little more in depth of the league and the videos we showed you. And,
absolutely, it was fun.
I know our fans that watch our podcast, and we're a small group compared to you. You have a huge subscriber base, and we're a niche. We get it. We're not mainstream. We're 40 years ago. We're looking back at old material, so your audience is limited. For us. But we're really just grateful that you came on and took time to talk with us. I know Dave and I were really looking forward to it this week, and I just want to thank you for coming on with us.
Oh yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. This was really cool. Like, it's kind of cringe to look back at my old work sometimes, like for many different reasons. Like I'm glad that the channel. It's fun to look back in a way because like it's fun to see like how much and how much the channel has changed and grown in that time, and what I've learned about myself and about wrestling, and it's all been just a big process. And I'm glad that the NWF was there at a time for me when I needed to start that process.
And I guess I should have pointed it out earlier. Brian isn't completely unfamiliar here. I believe you were trained with Playboy Buddy Rose and Colonel De Beers when you started. Was in the business, in the indie scene and everything. Went into it becoming a manager. So he's not like somebody who doesn't know what's going on as somebody that's in the business. I want to make sure our fans know that as well.
Yeah,
You're not just a YouTube guy. You were in the business.
I still am to this day. I'm working with POW Pro Wrestling out of Eugene, Oregon, and we've got that on our YouTube channel, and that's been a real fun thing to be part of. I'm also doing commentary for Prestige Wrestling. Check us out. We're on IWTV. And it's been great to be part of it, and I think that Wrestling with Wregret has helped kind of extend my career and help me evolve, because I was a manager, and these days I'm more on the broadcast side of things. But yeah, definitely, like, it all goes back to when I started training to wrestle. I did that for a little bit. Like, learning wrestling wasn't my place, but I've been very happy to stay in the business, in some form or fashion for the last 17 or 18 years or so. And yeah, for the channel to have been lasted this long and become my career is truly just it's very humbling, and it's this big surprise that I've made it this far. And in a way, the NWF is partly responsible for all that. So
I appreciate the comments, but Brian, I think you did it all yourself, and I think whether you did our review or not, you were going to get there. You're a very talented, very entertaining guy, and I like your stuff. I've watched, besides our NWF, I've watched other things you've done over the years, and like I said, it was great having you on. I know you got to get running here, so I don't want to have to keep you. Dave and I
just know, Brian, there's an open door for you anytime you want to.
Absolutely.
Drop on in. You've got the link, and if you see it Thursday night that we're here, just come on by, say hi.
And I want to remind everybody, Brian asked me last week, how do you want to go about this? And I told Brian, I keep it real, be yourself, don't sugarcoat it. Just because we know each other, I want you to be honest with us. And that's the response you got here tonight, folks. This is not, us saying, hey, Brian, don't be mean to us or anything like that. If he's going to, I would expect Brian to tell it like it is on our show. And Brian, you're saying like, gosh, it was so hard back then, but you don't have to apologize. Look, I still stand by what I said 10 years ago. I think it was a great piece that you did on us.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad it's held up relatively well. So
that it has. So, folks, I just want to thank again, Brian. Thanks for coming in with us. I know we'll let you, cut loose here. But again, thanks so much for joining us this week.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one, Brian.
Brian Zane, ladies and gentlemen, with Wrestling with Wregret. Great guy. It's not like we know each other. Brian, I mean, we do, but it's not like I talk to him regularly. Last year I had approached Brian through Facebook. I said, hey, would you be interested in coming on our podcast? And he, said right away that he would. We just never got around to getting it in there. But I hope you folks all enjoyed that interview with Brian. It was. I think it was worth the wait, huh, Dave?
Oh yeah. I enjoyed meeting him, talking to him, and getting his perspective.
Absolutely. Our comment feed, folks, is just, I don't know what they did over at EVMux, but our YouTube comments are just not coming in. I don't know what to say, but I can see all your comments. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. But one thing I do want to get out there is I want to talk about next week,
Yeah.
Dave.
Next week's going to be a fun one. I mean,
Absolutely.
we've had one or two guests here and there, but next week, you could say we're having a battle royal, so to speak.
Yes, as far as next week goes, it's what we're calling the Roundtable Reunion, and Dave, a new addition to that Roundtable Reunion. I just got confirmation. Super D #2, Troy Dazowski. We had him as a guest last year. I'm sorry, Super D #1. I get mixed up myself. I look like I did back in the day. But yeah, one half of the Super Ds, Troy Dazowski, will be joining us in that roundtable along with Kid USA Kelsey, Mr. Matt Kelsey, Steve Engstrom, Mr. X / Pretty Boy Taylor, Chad Ronnebaum, Rockin' Ronnebaum, Jamie McParlin, the Irish Terror, Ricky Vom, whatever one he wants to go by, and Jeff Dinsmore, Dr. Dread. It's going to be a real fun time in our our roundtable reunion next week with all these guys on the eve of the Hall of Fame voting to start, Dave.
Exactly. It'll give a chance for each of these guys to plead their case. I mean, I get an unfair advantage. I get to promote myself for it every week. But here's a chance for these guys to come in and promote themselves a little bit. Maybe try and steal your hearts away a little bit for a few votes.
And some of us, like myself and Kelsey, we're in the Hall of Fame. Super D, the Super Ds, of course, are in there. But for the rest of you guys, I'm really hoping that it's a fun Hall of Fame voting period. I'm just looking forward to seeing how the votes go. To be honest with you, to see how people vote, it'll be very, very interesting, I think.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be a fun one this year. I mean, it's our final round of Hall of Fame inductees. After this, we're shutting the doors and locking the doors on the Hall of Fame. Nobody else is getting in.
Yeah, because we can't keep doing it forever. By the way, ABC newspapers, they've covered us all the time, Dave. That's the newspaper up there in Anoka County and the whole upper northern side of the Twin Cities. I was in touch with the sports reporter, and they're going to cover the Hall of Fame. They're going to have it in the paper. Yeah, they've always covered us. It's of interest in the area there. So, so even the locals up there will hopefully get involved in the voting.
Well, I mean, I hate to say it, I'm kind of taking an unfair advantage. I'm promoting myself even out on the street.
And that's what you do. I've always said that. That's how some of the guys got in our Hall of Fame already. That we, when they voting was up, they let people know to vote for them, right? That's what you got to do.
It's like we've said before. Yeah, Crusher may decide who the nominees are for the Hall of Fame, but it's up to you fans to vote who goes into the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. I'm real big on that. I don't want to have any say in this. I hate Hall of Fames that are decided on by a small group of people. In my opinion, it should be the public. The public decides.
Exactly.
Because they're ultimately the ones that are entertained here. So they're the ones that should be deciding this. Not me, not you, the public.
Exactly. I mean, any Hall of Fame should be fan vote based.
Yeah.
Not, oh, I'm the promoter and I'm happy with you this week, so come on into my Hall of Fame.
I'm really disappointed, though, that our comment thing isn't working. Now, I can get Facebook comments, but I'm just not getting the YouTube comments that are coming in, but I'm seeing them. So if you guys ask anything on YouTube, I will see it. And as far as Facebook goes, yes, I can bring those in for sure. I think I mentioned this. This was he says, yes, it was, and I kind of forgot to say that Cold 412 is the kind of root beer drinker. Yeah, but Cold 412 is 412 Films. So those of you that had seen, he used to comment and chat on our videos back on some of our past shows, and so he's on the Facebook as well. And he, if we see any comments from him, that's the same person. But yeah, great. Gosh, it was a great interview with Brian. I was interesting to see his perspective, just like Carmine's last week, huh, Dave?
Oh yeah, I love getting outside perspective.
And that goes for anybody else out there that ever comes across our stuff. If you want to come on and talk with us, just let us know.
You want to tell us we suck to our face, so be it.
I'm open to all of that because it makes for good podcasts and we can discuss it. I'm hoping next week, Dave, we get this comment feed fixed and that everything's working there on the comments.
It'll be fun having everybody here.
Yep.
Getting the fans' comments for anybody.
Absolutely.
What's going to be most fun for me is, seeing how some of the guys interact with Pretty Boy.
Yeah.
I just ask next week, everybody who's involved with the show be professional.
Yeah. Like I've said it before, Steve Engstrom, I'm looking at King Coop's comment. I'm not going to repeat it, but you know what you said. Everybody can look at him the way they want. I get it. But here's the thing for me. I knew Steve. Okay. It's not just somebody, you guys know the story of Steve, but I actually knew him and worked with him for many, for several years before Larry Rhodey and the Luscious Larry era of things. And I can tell you right now that I think it goes without saying that, had Steve not joined us, we would not have evolved as quickly as we did.
Yep.
From the wrestling tech standpoint. I mean, he really brought us up to another level in the ring. And he progressed that much quicker. And Steve was also looking at other kids, trying to help them get their technique better. Some people look at Steve and say, well, what the heck is this 20, like Brian was saying, you get this 26-year-old, what is he doing in there with a bunch of kids? And immediately what comes to mind in this day and age is he must be a pedophile. It's a word we don't always like to say here because I don't like that word. But here's the reality of it. If you knew the Steve that Dave and I knew, he was anything but that. He was a lot of things, but he was not that.
Yeah.
So it's like I'd like to put that to bed. And the reason I say that is because, man, I was so at 16 years old, I was so homophobic then, Dave, at that age.
Mm-hmm.
If I sensed an inkling of that out of Steve, radar alarms would have been going off with me at that age. Trust me, there was none of that. I think with Steve, it was mainly just he was too small, and you had to be a big guy then to be in the business.
Yep. I mean, I'm 6'1", 6'2", and by the standards back in the day when we were doing this, I would have been a small guy, height-wise.
Yep. I mean, I can remember clear as day, if you weren't over 225 pounds, they wouldn't even talk to you.
Exactly.
Vern's camp, even Eddie's camp. And Eddie started to open up to it a little bit more later on in the mid 80s, late 80s. But yeah, you had to be a big guy. And I was really not big enough, at 150 pounds. Steve was maybe 160, 165. Just too small. Now, Steve could have made a good run at a manager. He could have done that. Look at Bobby the Brain Heenan. Never trained in professional wrestling, but he knew he could work. Steve was the same way. He was never trained. He knew he could work, but he was a talker. If Steve had enough brains, he should have made a promo tape, put something together, sent it to Vern, try to get in the door. Vern was starving for a good manager at the time, mid 80s. He could have used him.
Yeah, the only manager they had in the 80s that really sticks out to me was Diamond Dallas Page.
Yep, and Polly Dangerously.
Yep.
Which really he's not the, what does he go by now?
Paul Heyman.
Paul Heyman. He's not the guy you see today, folks. Back then, he was a different kind of Paul Heyman. He's better now, I think.
Yeah.
For a manager, but yeah, I think Steve could have made a run that way. I really do. And I've always said that. But to be a wrestler, he was just too small. He knew this, and he's seen what we were doing. And I know I was going to ask Brian, but we kind of got cut short. But, Brian had always said, well, why didn't he just go get trained? Wasn't that easy. They wouldn't talk to you if you weren't that big. And the other question is, why were these guys riding our coattails? Why was Larry and Steve and the rest of them wanting to cling to us when they could just go out and do their own thing? Right?
Well, with Larry, he didn't have the ability, to be honest. I wasn't that good. I'll freely admit that. I wasn't that good. But I'd like to think I was a little better than Larry was.
Yeah, Larry was great at being offensive. He could do that press slam. He could flex and get the crowd going. He was an attraction, and that's the way I booked him. But when it came to taking bumps, it was over.
Yep. He couldn't take bump one.
No. Steve made, when Steve went against Luscious Larry, Pretty Boy Taylor, he made those matches. Steve made a lot of matches, but he certainly made the one for Larry. He made it work.
I'm going to give Steve, you're going to be shock crusher. I'm going to give Pretty Boy a little bit of props here. Basically what Steve did with Larry is Steve went in there with a broom and made it look good.
Yeah, he really was. Steve Engstrom really was that good, folks. He was the best amongst us all as far as taking the bumps, no doubt about that. And with Luscious Larry, he made the match. But here, I was getting at with that, though, is why didn't they do their own league? And why were they riding our coattails and wanting to cling to the NWF and be part of the NWF while they did their own league? Because they knew that we were popular, just like Eddie Sharkey knew we were popular. And Eddie wanted to get in with us and do a dual event. Well, these guys didn't want to just get rid of us because they knew that we were an attraction. They knew that part of the reason there was 350 fans, well, I wouldn't even say part of the reason, a good chunk of the reason is because of us.
Exactly.
But promoting Luscious Larry, I remember Larry when he first got going with this and we knew we were going to do it. He's like, he wanted to do a match with Mr. X. He goes, how about I do a match with Mr. X on this tape? And I said, absolutely not. He's like, why not? I said, you're more than welcome to work out with Steve when you want in the ring to get ready for the match. But no, you're not going to wrestle. This is why, Larry. You're an attraction. I said, Larry, remember when they bring Andre the Giant into the territory for the Battle Royals? And all we would see is that poster and maybe some clips and highlights, but nothing much. Just the poster, really. And they kept hyping up Andre the Giant is coming. You're going to be our Andre the Giant, so to speak. We're going to just show you. You're going to flex or whatever. But you're not going to be seen in the ring. For them to see you wrestle, they got to come to the event. That was my mentality. That's the way I promoted that guy, and it seemed to work. We got a comment here, Dave, from Sky Sports Video News. I wish I could pull it in, but let me just say what he says. He says, I love the parts of the show I could see tonight. My internet kept cutting in and out. I will have to catch it tomorrow if these problems stop. Yeah, everything's going weird from those solar flares and everything. Who knows what's going on with the internet and connections?
Well, this morning I went to my carrier provider. I went to their store, and they straight up said, there was a big conference call between all the different carriers.
Yeah.
And they weren't sure if, that solar flare caused a satellite to get damaged or go down. But
yeah, who knows?
There was something going on earlier today.
There's definitely, it's not a coincidence that this all happened after the solar flares, though. That solar flares can mess up a lot of things, folks.
Exactly.
But no, I was going to finish up with Larry then. So Luscious Larry, and then I would, when we did the event with Eddie Sharkey, the dual event, which I know the guys want to see that one. We're going to do a watch along with that here soon. But I brought in Pretty Boy Taylor versus Luscious Larry for that event too. And because I felt it would be something more along the lines of what Eddie would want on the show, right? With his bigger guys. And but their match wasn't anywhere near the intensity that it was in the Armory. But then Larry went against the Warrior in Brooklyn Park, and at this point now Larry's head is exploding. He's thinking he's the big star and attraction, right?
Yep.
So that's when he gets this bright idea that he's going to go out on his own and create the NCWA. He convinces Steve to come along with him and a few others, starts bringing in their adult friends, and they try to and then they say to me, we still want to work with you, because they had to, you know. It was we had the TV show. They didn't know how to do the TV show.
We had the ring.
Yep, and it was a time slot we've had for about 4 years at that point, 3 years, and they knew that they needed that. So, and we had the ring, and so of course they wanted to do it with us, but
they wanted it on their terms.
But here's the thing with Luscious Larry. So when they split, when they did, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, but when they split away from us at that March Armory card and they went their way, we went our way. We had to get our ring back. They built a new ring. And then Larry, running the NCWA at this point now with his adults, friends, decides to book a card at some local, kind of like what Eddie would do at a bar.
Yep.
He books an event. He did it the same night we did our Anoka Armory event, as a matter of fact, in August. So not only were we going up against Jim Crockett, he also across town was doing his NCWA up against our NWF event. We were at the Armory, though. They were at some bar. I remember Steve Engstrom. Steve Engstrom came and worked. He worked both shows. He worked Larry's, and then he came and worked with us. And he told me, Steve told me then, and this is, and for Steve wouldn't tell me this if it wasn't the case. He goes, if you think it's bad out there, because we had 70 people in attendance, and we were expecting close to a sellout because of the way we do armories, right?
Yep.
Well, in hindsight, shit, you go up against Jim Crockett and the same night, that's not a good thing, right?
No.
So there were 70 people, though. It's not a bad crowd either, right? But I was disappointed. Steve, though, came up and he says, if you think this is bad, not having it filled up, you should have seen what Larry did. I said, what do you mean? He goes, you could have heard a pin drop. He goes, I think there were maybe 3, I think he said like less than 10 people at the event. So the great Luscious Larry, I hate to say it this way, but the invincible Luscious Larry, you could see what his drawing power was when he tried to do it on his own. When he didn't have us behind him, promoting him, supporting him. And I'm not trying to sound like I know what I'm doing, but I knew enough how to promote that guy. And, I had done it enough at that point. I kind of earned my knowledge at that point. And I knew how to work him as an attraction. He didn't know how to work himself. And like you very well pointed out, Dave, when the bell rang, it was over with Larry as far as entertaining you taking bumps. So, but yeah, guys, like I said, it was a great show tonight. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked listening into me and Dave ramble here at the end. But I don't know. My voice is getting to the limit. I think I'm about ready to wrap her.
Yep, I'm ready to wrap, and I'm looking forward to next week. To all the alumni, looking forward to seeing you.
And I'm hoping for sure that our comment feed works properly on YouTube so we can bring these comments in. I think this is just a glitch. I think it'll be back to normal next week.
Well, you can always check with EV Mox too.
Yep. And we can always test this too. I can have, we can do some testing before we do the show just to make sure it works. So we'll probably do that. If you see us go live on the channel unannounced, it's probably us testing. So, yeah.
So, to our viewers, we hope to see you again next week.
Oh, by the way, King Coop comment, he said he enjoyed the live tonight, too. So, King Coop's last comment.
Thank you, King Coop. Join us next week because, you get a lot of rambling from Crusher and I. You're going to get to see a lot of faces come in next week.
Yep. And I'm really can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to it. And of course, we're talking about the roundtable reunion. Join us next week for that one. Same time.
On Leap Day.
And this one here, we can get started right away because I'm sure we'll have a few in there right away. And if some of the others, filter in like we had tonight with Brian, so be it. But we can at least get started with the conversation, and it'll be fun. We're going to have a fun time next week.
So, for Crusher Crossen, I'm Dixie Dave. Stay safe. Keep yourself happy. And join us next week.
See you next week, folks.